My name is Swami Deva Rashid, the name given to me by Osho, and for the purposes of this book I'm called Rashid Maxwell, which makes it easier for the West to comprehend that. I've been 40 years next Wednesday with Osho. Before that I was an artist who actually left the corridors of power in the art world to be a farmer. Actually, somehow I got the idea of being self-sufficient, of growing my own food instead of having to work in that world of art schools and their somewhat messy politics and the galleries too. And I wasn't good at all that sort of stuff. But I am good at growing vegetables and farming and nature. So off I went, bought a farm, and that was bliss, that was heaven. My wife, two kids from a previous marriage used to come. And what was so interesting is the feeling that everything is perfect and yet there's something missing. And I didn't know what that something missing was until one time, this time 40 years ago, going to a carol service in my little boys' school. These small boys, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, singing Christmas carols so beautifully in a very ancient church, like pre-Norman Saxon church. I mean, it's an extraordinary building, a place that's been hallowed by 1,000 years of prayer and 1,000 years of silence. And in that church, I had an extraordinary experience of knowing what it was that was missing. It was the spiritual, the inner. I got everything outside that I could possibly want. The most beautiful place to live, beautiful wife, family. But the thing that was missing was that inner exploration, that inner journey, that inner wealth. So, to cut a long story short, I had a short flirtation with Christianity, which I'd been conditioned to and brought up in a sort of middle class education, and then actually that didn't work. But what was extraordinary was one day I was driving to work. I used to work as an art therapist 2 or 3 days a week when I wasn't on the farm. I just with a community, a therapeutic community, and I was on my way there, and the snow was so bad and there was so much ice on the road that I stopped after, 10, 15 miles, saying I'm not going to be able to get to the destination. And I went into a phone booth to call up the workplace and say I'm not going to make it. And then suddenly I could see, coming sideways down the road, skidding, a huge petrol tanker coming straight at me. It actually jumped the curb, hit the telephone booth, which was made of cast iron. Just a few panes of glass were broken, but I survived. And the driver jumped down. He said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." But actually I couldn't say that everything had changed. I'd seen death like face to face, and I knew I had to do something about my life. Then what was extraordinary was within days £1,000 came from paintings my wife and I had sold a long time before. A holiday, the one holiday that we wanted, we planned in 3-4 years, got cancelled. A friend was looking for somewhere to stay who was actually competent with animals and looking after the land. And a book arrived from Pune. And the book was called The Way of the White Cloud. My wife came into the cow tie in the early morning. I'm milking the cow. And she starts reading. And within 2 sentences, we're in tears. We're both in tears. Because this guy is saying exactly what it was that we didn't know we were looking for, actually. And that was Osho talking about relationships, about love, about spirituality. In one paragraph, he got us. And the money had come, everything had come. In 3 weeks or so, we were there. And that was 40 years ago, and one next Wednesday. We took sannyas. So, and then for me it was clear, just the beauty of the man, the beauty of the place, the intelligence that was around that I had longed for, at university, hadn't found, at art school, had found a glimpse of at art school, people talking the same language as myself. But at Oxford, I just felt an outsider. I just had nothing. I left precipitately. And suddenly here in Pune, 1977, the place was humming. And I just knew this was where I wanted to be. And Lakshmi said, "This is your home. You go back, you sell the farm, come and live here. You are part of the family." And by extraordinary coincidence, there was a magazine open on her desk which had an article about us moving out of London to the country. There was an article about people going back to the land. And so it was a lovely welcome. And yeah, Lakshmi's message was clear. I told her how in love I was with the place, with the people, and with the clear intelligence that was permeating the community, the commune, actually. So she said, then it's clear, you come, you sell the farm, you come and live here, and you be part of the family. So for me that was very clear from the very beginning. And actually, as it happened later, my wife felt not so clear, not so good, went back to the West for a while, came back, and then became ambivalent about her feelings. So in the end, some 3 or 4 years later, we actually separated, because for me it was clear I wanted to be with Osho, and for her she was not so clear, and then in the end went into a sort of rejection. Sannyas also was very clear. In those days, the newcomers would be sitting at the back, and I remember on the 3rd morning, Osho came out for discourse in his car, was driven round the building, the big mandir, the Buddha Hall, got out and stepped onto his podium, gave his talk. He's far, far away, like a little figure in the distance. And there's this great sea of people, 500, 600, 700 people, and we're right at the back. But when he's finished the discourse, he drives round, and the window's down, and he's just namasteing. So all I had to do was turn around and namaste. And that smile killed me. I don't know what it was, but I collapsed in tears. That smile killed me. I just lay down there and I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried for, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours. People came, touched me, people hugged me, people just gave me a stroke. But it was like my past, my childhood, the pain, the agony of the childhood and with it the beauty, the innocence, the fragrance of life, the sweetness. It was tears of joy as much as tears of anguish. And I took sannyas that night. We all took sannyas, and we all got the name Deva Rashid, Deva Rashida, and my 3 kids, 2 kids and a stepson. And then, we went back to England, sold, and now this is more, I want to talk about Laxmi, because she was central in the commune. I mean, Osho was the hub. No, Osho was the still point. Osho was the still point at the centre of a turning wheel. She was the turning hub, and we were all the spokes, as it were. So she was central to our lives. And at the same time, I use another metaphor, which was, she was my bridge to Osho before I could swim, before I knew anything about meditation, before I even knew what meditation was. I mean, I'd heard of meditation, I'd tried sitting with my eyes shut, but there's this chaos of thoughts and ideas and memories. It's a whirlwind in there. How can you meditate? What is meditation? But in the course of time, sitting every day with Osho, discourse day after day after day, gradually meditation starts happening. Actually, whatever it is he is, his stillness, his silence, it permeates. And so those congregations of Buddha in Buddha Hall of 500, 1,000 and later 10,000 people, they were exquisite manifestations of silence, of stillness. 1,000, 10,000 people, and you could hear a pin drop. That's what taught me to swim. That's how I could swim to Osho. Before that, Lakshmi with the bridge, watching her stillness, watching her respond to millions of questions that would come to her from all sides, to do with everything to do with starting a new centre in Brazil, to I can't sleep in the same room as my roommate, he snores, to should we do a project on a film about da-da-da. She always was coming out of this stillness. She was coming out. I'm not saying she was enlightened in the way that Osho was, but she was channeling him. She was the hollow bamboo, to use a common phrase. She was the vessel for his vision. I'll tell you a good story. I was going through sort of crises with my wife, her wanting to leave, wanting to stay, wanting to be with me, not wanting to be with me. And at a certain stage, I got very sick, and I got something wrong with my throat, and that affected some nerves, and one side of my face got paralysed, and it's called Bell's syndrome or something. And so I had to have a iPad. No, what's it called? Yeah. An eye patch over my eye. And she saw me one day and she called me and she said, "What's going on?" So I said, "A bit of trouble, da da da." And she said, "You go to the office, you ask for some money, and you go and have a week's holiday up in the mountains." And she just sent me up to this lovely place called Mahabaleshwar. And that was an extraordinary occurrence to go from the commune, 1,000 people milling around the whole time, to absolute silence and solitude of the mountains. And I love solitude. That's also been one of the threads through my life, is aloneness, solitude. So that was, for me, incredibly insightful for her, that just out of nowhere she would just come and say, you go and have a holiday, you go and have a break. The other thing I thought was amazing too, another story, was that one day I got a call to go into the office. By this time I was running the vegetable gardens, because growing vegetables on the farm had been my education. So we brought a revolutionary energy into agriculture in the ashram, and we're growing vegetables for Osho, organic of course. And we'd built up a big crew, I don't know, 8, 10, 15 people probably. And suddenly the gardens were producing fantastic vegetables that a year and a half before we couldn't even think of growing. Great big lush lettuces and beans up to the sky. So I got the call to go to the office, and she said, a lot of the Westerners here are used to, habituated to eating a lot of protein, and we're vegetarians, so I heard that you on your farm made cheese. Would you make cheese for the commune? There was only one answer in those days, and that was yes. So she gave me a space, told me to go to the big kitchens where Diksha, the sort of the dragon of the catering business, was installed. And Diksha gave me a space to make cheeses, and I made molds and ordered the milk and the saucepans and the heating the milk, and got it all together and started making milk. And I did have trouble, because the cleaners would come every day with great buckets of water, hose pipes, and squeegee water around the place. But actually cheeses, when they're setting, they can't be disturbed. They've got to be absolutely. And I asked them not to. I asked Diksha to ask them not to. I begged Diksha to ask them not to. I just, no way could I persuade Diksha to tell her people not to clean around this area, because the cheeses were being endlessly disturbed and were not setting properly. So I went to see Lakshmi and I said, I need another space. And she said, okay, I'll check it out. A day later I got a call from Lakshmi to go back to the office, and there was Diksha sitting there. And Diksha's saying, you're negative, he's negative, he doesn't cooperate, he's a bad worker, he doesn't know what he's doing, a whole lot of negative stuff. He's just on an ego trip. So I said to Lakshmi, okay, I may be on an ego trip, but that's not the problem that I'm concerned about now. It's the cheese's setting, and they need to be left undisturbed. And I've asked Diksha, and it's not happening. And then another attack from Diksha, and then Lakshmi stopped her and said, Diksha, you don't lie to me. Rashid, we'll give you a new space. I'll let you know tomorrow. So as I said, we all had a great love of Lakshmi because of her position, her central position. But I also had a personal love, just because I felt the way she treated me had been so clean and helpful for me, nourishing. So when Swami Atul invited me to write about Lakshmi, her life, first of all I said, I'm not a historian, I'm not a journalist, I don't have that sort of mind. I'd just written a novel. So, and more, I saw myself as a poet rather than even as a novelist, a poet and painter. So, to begin with, this lovely man called Veet Moa, who had been Lakshmi's driver in Pune, he started working on a biography, and he'd actually worked with her before on some writing project. After a few months or a year, I think it might have been, he sent a manuscript to Atul, and it had stopped at the year 81, when actually that was 15 years before Lakshmi left the body, before she died. So he asked me to continue that. So then I spent the first year actually researching a lot, writing the wrong book actually, trying to use other people's writings. And then after a year I talked with Atul, and he said, no, you write your book. And that was very encouraging, and I felt hugely trusted by him. And for me, that I want to say very strongly, I've felt his trust all along, that he has a particular feeling for Lakshmi, particularly love for her, having worked with her a lot. And that wasn't the same relationship I had with her. So I had to write from my standpoint, not from his. And he was very magnanimous, generous to allow me to write my writing. So then it took the next 2 years, and it's been a very intense journey, because there are whole bits of the story which come down to me contradictory. Someone says, actually no, she was there at that time, so she couldn't have been. Somebody said, no, she was here at that time. So I've had to deal with a lot of contradictory things, which makes me start with the introduction, really, that biography is a branch of fiction. For facts, we go to Wikipedia but for truth, and that's what I wanted to communicate, the truth of Lakshmi's life. Okay, now I'm getting into deep water, and I'm happy to be getting into deep water. Lakshmi's life was in a way a template for an incredibly productive, creative way to live a life. Her relationship with Osho was one of devotion. And for me, that's the thread that runs through the book, the thread of devotion. Because with devotion, which implies trust, which implies surrender, which implies a lack of ego, a diminishment of ego, with devotion, anything is possible. Devotion to the Master. And her devotion runs through the book as a possible learning for all of us. I didn't write the book to teach, but I think any more than Osho was a teacher, but we learned from him. So I'm using the story of Lakshmi to point to Osho, because Osho is the man for the times. We can all see all around us, we're heading to the precipice, we're nearly over the edge. The climate, our political systems, our social systems, the institutions of our so-called civilizations are all in decline. And for me, it's clear that Osho is the one with the key how we can leave a future for future generations. Otherwise we're going to destroy the planet. We're going to wipe out. So the book really is the story of one who transforms herself in the way that humanity, or a good part of humanity, needs to transform itself now if we are to save the planet. She lived a life that had its ups and downs, it had its major disasters, and it had its wonderful uprisings. But throughout that graph, there is this line of devotion, of trust, which actually manifests as a meditative person transforming through this inner journey of meditation. So the book is written for particularly this generation, which I see coming up, who know that things are wrong, who know that the old ways are corrupted, who sees that we can't go on business as usual. There is this generation, and they go from, like, I've got 16-year-old grandchildren, 15-year-olds who see that clearly. 40-year-olds I see too in business who know that this isn't right what we're doing, that it's not sustainable. So I've written for those who see that something's wrong but don't know what to do. And that's many, many, many people. It's a huge proportion of the world, but we don't hear their voice because the voice of the press and the voice of the politicians don't give them the space, don't give them the voice.